All right, cool. Welcome everybody to Apprenticeship Patterns, Chapter 2. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think, Jamal, you have the controls, so could you make sure that my screen is showing to everybody?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead and get that up. Let's see. Okay. All right. This is literally my first time ever on Ubuntu, so
No.
you know, trial by fire. Let's see if it works. Looks like it's working so far. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
I can.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about others, but I can.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, so Apprenticeship Patterns, Chapter 2.
I'm not seeing your screen. I just see
You're not at all?
your picture. Yeah.
I'm seeing their screen. Me
See
too.
my screen?
Maybe it's me. What's going on here? All right. Well, if everyone else could see your screen, then go right ahead.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. All right. So, okay. All right. So it kind of starts off with this story about a Zen master and a young philosopher. The young philosopher comes to learn from the Zen master, and basically every time the Zen master starts to try to teach him something, he interjects with how he already knows this thing and talks to him about it. And so there's this imagery of having, you know, he's pouring the tea into the cup, but the cup is full, and then it starts overflowing, and the philosopher is astounded, like, what are you doing? And he says, you know, if you come to me with a cup that is already full, how can you expect me to give you something to drink? So that was kind of a neat little fable. And the lesson here is you can't learn anything new when you've got the attitude that you already know everything. And that's kind of a good intro into the rest of the chapter, which is all about kind of your ignorance and building up skills around knowing what you don't know. So here are the patterns that we go over. Your first language, the white belt, unleashing your enthusiasm. Concrete skills, expose your ignorance, confront your ignorance, the deep end, and retreat into competence. So the first pattern we've got here is called your first language. The context that they give it in is, you know, you're just starting out, you have a pretty shallow understanding of one, maybe two languages. The problem here is that you're, you know, you need to be proficient in a given language because something is depending on you being proficient in it. And so the solution that they propose is to pick the language and become fluent in it. So they have some suggestions for how to become fluent in languages, such as, you know, you learn better by solving real problems. So build an app that you care about, or work on a project that you think is actually going to be used. You know, there's more writing on it, you're going to learn more. Use a testing framework to better understand language. Realize that it might take a while on your own, so find people to learn with. And then their action at the end here was find your language's specification and read it. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing to start, because I feel like that's definitely where I am right now in my coding journey. Like, I am okay at Ruby and I'm okay at JavaScript, but I probably just need to pick one and get to it. So yeah, and I think, you know, I've already found some people to learn with, which is awesome. But yeah, it's pretty base level. I think if everybody is probably either already here or past this point, but it's a good reminder.
How many times in CodeNewbies, though, have you seen somebody who's on their third or fourth language and getting ready to start their next one because they got stuck and they decided that they didn't like that language? Like, inevitably, like, I've seen those people come through. They don't usually last for very long because they're just hopping back and forth between languages. They don't take the time to get good at anything. They don't
Right.
Like, dig in and focus.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it's really hard because, you know, it's like you want to be full stack, you want to be proficient at a lot of things, but
Yeah.
especially your first language, you just kind of have to dive in and learn it.
Yeah.
I think the idea of reading the language specification was interesting. I haven't ever read a full language specification, but I would be interested to look into it.
I'm not
I
even
don't know.
sure what that means.
Yeah, is that just like the docs, like Ruby docs,
I think so.
or
That was what I understood it to mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're trying to read Ruby docs, Ruby has a ton of docs. Like it goes, I've touched on like all of the stuff that I ever like touch on day to day, like string and array and enumerable and all that stuff. I've read those entire docs. Like I made a point of it and sat down like, okay, today I'm going to read the documentation for array, and today I'm going to read the documentation for enumerable. But like kernel and all that stuff, now I've never. As Ruby has stuff that I don't even know about, like it's very down there that I'll probably never get around to.
Right. Well, especially stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that you don't necessarily use every day. Like you're not going to learn it just by reading the specification for some niche thing that you might use once, like a year from now. You know. But I think like I've definitely like when I'm doing like Exorcism or what's the other one? Code Wars, go to the Ruby docs first before I start looking on like Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
And I find that really helps a lot.
That's a good idea.
A lot of times on Exorcism, I'll see somebody use a method I've never seen before, and the first thing I'll do is go like dig around in the documentation to see how that method works, because like for example, I saw one recently that was I think the TR method. I had never seen that before. I didn't even know what it was. It was just a pretty straightforward method, but somebody used it, and I was like, oh wow, that's a perfect solution for that particular problem. And I'd never even heard of it before. And I'd even read the documentation for it. I just, at the time, it hadn't stuck.
Right. Yeah, and it also kind of, using it for stuff like Exorcism helps you to learn how to navigate it.
Yeah.
So even if you don't remember everything, you kind of know where to look.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like one of the frustrating things about development is there's so many things being learned, and one of them is syntax. But then once you get past syntax, there's actual development, you know, which is as you're testing, understanding framework, understanding the complexities of different data structures. And those are, you have to actually know the top level of a syntax before you get to attack those deeper problems. And I think that's the reason why this is advising. The way I see it is you need your first language so that you can, instead of be shallow, actually go deep and learn what real development looks like. Whereas if you learn too many languages, you kind of stay on the surface, and you're not exposed to those challenges that come in when you have, you know, I'm still trying to go deep, so I don't even know what those issues are, but I just know, for me, like one of them might be understanding, you know, how the stack works. You know, you wouldn't really get to touch that type of logic until you are building complex things. Or databases too. Like databases are, you know, after you get past the different methods and stuff, you know, how does the server, you know, work with the database, and like what are some optimization things that you need to consider and stuff like that. Those are all things I'm still just now discovering that you won't touch unless you stay with one language and you go deep into it. So
yeah. I know it took me over a year before the first time I ever wrote something in Ruby that threw a C stack trace at me. And the first time that happened, I was like, oh crap.
How did you manage that?
Well, if you write something in Ruby that segfaults, it throws you a Ruby stack trace and a C stack trace, because it assumes that you found a bug in Ruby and that you need to report it to the
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But you're writing some bad Ruby code if you do that. Yeah, it was bad Ruby code. It was like it was a I was abusing Ruby for the purposes of a quiz, and in the process, I found a bug in Ruby.
Yeah, so you've got your first language, and now the white belt, which is, like we're just saying, a deep understanding of your first language. Like you have your deep understanding of your first language, you've got that down, and now you want to learn maybe that language that you put off before, and it's all of a sudden harder to learn new things. And you don't seem to be learning things as quickly as you did the first time around, and it's troublesome. So they propose a solution of, while maintaining confidence in your skills, kind of roll back your perceived skill level to 0 and learn as if you didn't know anything. So kind of be childlike in curiosity and enthusiasm, and don't let the fact that you don't know this language as well as you know your first language deter you from it, because that can be, you spend 2 years building up your confidence in this one language, all of a sudden you don't know anything again, and that's scary for some people. So they also say find an opportunity to unlearn something. So if you've written a solution or something in one type of language, try writing it in a different language entirely. Like instead of object-oriented, use a functional language. Just something totally different that will completely change your perspective and reference frame. Shake it up a lot so you really realize how square zero you are. Which I really like, and is something that I haven't gotten to yet, but I think that's a really neat way of thinking about things.
I thought it was interesting talking about the white belt. I think that was the one with the Yoda quote in it. You must unlearn what you've learned. That you can go to a language. So, like, say even if you're just doing Ruby on Rails and you're coding something out in Ruby and you realize you need to write some JavaScript, so you go over to write some JavaScript, and maybe you approach the problem in the way that you would with Ruby. When there's a different way that's the JavaScript way of doing it. So I thought that was interesting that you can both kind of help yourself by knowing some concepts ahead of time, but you can also hurt yourself by assuming that you know about a language when you're learning it.
Yeah. So like Ruby in particular has some very there's some very Ruby ways of doing things. For example, like Rubyists have for loops, but they never write for loops. Like, never. I know if I'm somewhere and I see somebody writing Ruby for loops, I know they're new to Ruby, because it's just not how you write code in Ruby.
Do you mean like with an actual for?
With a for in, yeah. You can do it in Ruby. It's a bad idea and nobody does it.
Huh. I didn't know that there was one.
Yeah, because you don't ever see them in the wild. Yeah, that's the thing. Ruby has it. You don't see them in the wild. Nobody uses them who knows about them because they leak scope in Ruby. And iterators do the same thing better. But, yeah, so like I could always spot somebody who's coming from another language because if they're using, because like that's a first sign for me that I'm seeing code from somebody who Ruby is not what they're used to coding in. And every language has those little like code smells that are particular to that language.
Yeah, I know for my experience with that, like I've been trying to use for loops for a while, and every time I try to because I have a JavaScript base and that's what I know, and so it's like, oh, I can just use this, and then someone's like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
It's like, why isn't it right?
Well, there's a really nice blog post I'll link to on why you should never use a for loop in Ruby, because it leaks scope and iterators don't.
Ah, cool. Okay, so now I actually have a reason to not use it as opposed to just style.
It creates variables that, so like an iterator in Ruby has a block, and if you assign a variable to that block when you create the block. That's the thing, the side of the pipe. But once that block is gone, that variable goes with it. It doesn't stick around. With Ruby's for loop, if you say for something in whatever, the thing that you said sticks around after the for loop's gone.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're creating a variable that then just hangs out, and and with the block it comes and goes. Safely. That's one of the problems with the for loop in Ruby. That's not the only problem. That's one of the more obvious ones that's easy to show.
There is I'm not sure what's his name. He's from Eastern Europe. But he's kind of famous. The guy that created the Ruby guide, the Ruby style guide. I'm not sure what his name is. He have like a talk about Ruby, the bad parts, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he's he talks about some stuff should be removed from the language. One of them is the for loop, and he was talking about I think multi-line comments, like when you have like equal sign begin, equal sign end. That stuff like should be removed from the language because they are pretty much useless.
Right.
And he is complaining about Ruby for the whole talk. So I didn't appreciate the talk, but if you wanna, go look for the bad parts, Ruby the bad parts, you should look it up.
If you look on the GitHub style guide for Ruby, it specifically says like never use for loops in any of the code you write for us. And the leaking scope is one of the reasons they mentioned. But let me look up that blog post. I'll link to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's my white belt. I didn't know any of that stuff, so.
I didn't know any of that stuff either.
Well, my mentor actually wrote the blog post that I'm linking to, and I used a for loop one time, and he freaked. He was like, "Yeah, don't do this."
He kind of freaked out on you.
yeah. I got a kind of a rant. He linked me to his blog post.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, so that's good to.
Yeah.
So the next kind of.
Every language has these little things to them, like their own little idiosyncrasies, and you have to, when you come to a new language, like that's what I was gonna say. Like I'm gonna have to, when I come to some new language, learn to like for loops, because most languages use them and use them intelligently, and implement them right.
Mm-hmm.
And every different language will have those things. And I think that's for me like the great example in Ruby of like being a white belt is don't just assume that don't assume anything about the language when you come into it.
Yeah.
I don't know, personally, I don't feel that I'm there yet, like wearing the white belt for another language, because I don't feel like I kind of absorbed Ruby yet. So when I read this, I don't think I'm kind of ready to wear the white belt for another language, because I think I'm wearing the white belt already for Ruby. So it's maybe that's an advice for the future. So
yeah,
I feel like go ahead. Sorry. Oh no, the way I interpreted it was white belt for me is giving me permission to say, let's start from square one. Oftentimes I feel like there's a pressure to perceive or pretend like I am the shit, but I'm not. Like, and it's hard because everybody's knows all this stuff, and I'm like kind of walking into the room like, what's a variable, and to wear the white belt's like, oh well, that's where you're at, and that's okay. And oftentimes there's this pressure to be like, I like I know something, but I don't, and I don't know, it just gives me permission to be myself, ultimately. And to not, and then the one before it was learn one language deeply. It gives me permission to not have to scramble, like to not have to be the expert when I'm not the expert. And there's this thing, like I was thinking about this idea of, it gets brought up a lot. It's the imposter syndrome, And then I remember listening to one of the CodeNewbie podcasts where they're like, well, it's not really imposter syndrome if you really don't know anything. It's just, you don't know anything, and that's okay. That's all right. That's one stage. And then I'm kind of brought to this other picture of this kind of frou-frou, but I listened to this one thing, and it's like, there's like this harp music, and it's just like, when is a flower actually a flower? And then it's just like, is it a flower when it's a seed? Is it a flower when it breaks the soil? Is it a flower when it has pollen? And it's like, the flower is always the flower. And so, like, I was thinking about myself, and like, because I get down on myself that I am in the white belt. It's like, what a piece of shit I am. I don't know what an iterator is. But then at the same time, it's like, I think to me, the white belt represents the sense like, well, I'm a coder, and that's okay. Let's learn this the right way. Let's learn this deeply. Let's put things first things first. And so that's the way I take this apprenticeship section to apply to me right now.
Well, I think being the white belt has two different contexts. So this kind of came up in a conversation on the random chat today with Dees. He was talking about people who can't Google around to solve their problems because they don't know how to ask the question yet. And I remember when I was at that stage where I couldn't Google to solve coding problems or to figure out what this error meant because I just didn't know how to word the question. Like Stack Overflow wasn't useful to me because I couldn't get the right search results out of Stack Overflow. And I think that, and I assume that it's this way with martial arts, and I think being the white belt analogy applies in this case and in the martial arts case, where I think it would be much easier to learn your second martial arts style after you've become a black belt in one than it was to get your first black belt. And I think it would be the same thing with your coding language. Once you actually really learn, actually learn your first coding language, I think coming to the second one, yeah, you have to start over from the beginning, but you have a lot more context to the question to the questions you're trying to ask. And even if you have to unlearn what you've learned, I think unlearning it is a lot easier than learning it the first time.
Yeah, because now you have like a framework for
to
learn your second language in. So you just kind of have to take the stuff out and just use the frame for it. Put stuff back in. But I think that's really hard, especially if you're like really, really good at one language. And so here's the next one is unleash your enthusiasm, which I do not have any trouble with this at all. But the context here is you have an insatiable excitement and curiosity regarding the craft of software development. And the problem is holding back your enthusiasm to match the level of the people around you, for social pressures or whatever. And the solution here is just don't let them dampen your excitement for, software development. Enthusiasm is a precious commodity and it'll accelerate your learning. They do kind of mention, you might have to play to team dynamics, and being over-enthusiastic might not make you gel with the group so much. So if that's the case, then, do that on your own or outside of work. But at this stage, you have so little to lose. Don't be afraid to dive in head first and get really excited about it. And their action here to kind of help foster that is if you had a new idea that you wanted to suggest but were too afraid to, or were too afraid that you're enthusiastic and would be too enthusiastic, you would be too enthusiastic. Find the person who you're going to suggest that to and suggest it to them. And then welcome feedback on the idea and seek improvement. So I think that's such great advice for any profession, not just software development. But I feel like there is kind of the stereotype of the grumpy developer who can kind of dampen the excitement in the room. I know I've been there and it's just no fun. So and as a new person, they kind of look to you as being the one that might not know a whole lot, but you're excited to learn. So, and I've been seeing that more and more on like job applications or job descriptions and stuff, where they're like, like we don't necessarily have a number requirement for how many years you have to be in the field, but you just have to be super excited to learn, and that has to be super apparent. So I think that's, people are starting to pick up more on, it's, it's excitement over just like straight up experience.
I would agree with that. I mean, if I'm working with someone, I would much rather they be enthusiastic and maybe still, picking things up as they go, than someone who's kind of, jaded or grumpy and maybe already knows it, but they just don't want to be there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and as a new person, this is kind of the one thing you have over everybody else, is just being excited and being allowed to be super excited about it.
Yep.
Because you haven't had a chance to be jaded yet, so.
I'm a little hedonistic, but I feel like it's the point to a lot of things. Like, one person might argue I'm a developer because I want to produce the software that makes the world better, but like, I don't know. I think when it comes to work, like, if we can, I don't know. Like, I'd rather be around people that like are excited about what they're doing, and I would actually be that. I don't know. I've quit many jobs and come to this point in my life because and I just rather be around people that are into what they're doing. I don't know. That's just kind of the point to me. It's like,
yeah, but
why?
I think even in programming, it's kind of hard to find those. Like for example, now I work. Like this is kind of my first Ruby job, and like I have a team lead and another guy, and what I feel is that they don't give a shit. Seriously, and every time I mention best practices or the right way to do things or whatever, it's like man, get over yourself. Let's finish this shit and go home and stuff like that. So I start feeling like I'm alienated, and so basically I kind of started to feel that I started not give a shit as well. I just wanna like whenever there is a code review, you suggest something or let's improve this or whatever. Like the guy will tell me, what difference does it make? This code work and the other one work as well. So who cares? And so it's hard. And so what I'm trying to say is it's hard to find the perfect team or the perfect group of developers that share your enthusiasm. It's kind of hard, and that's what kind of the book mentioned, that you need kind of, if you find this kind of environment, you need to kind of adapt and maybe do it outside of work, go to meetups or connect with someone online. I think we are trying to do that thing here, like we're trying to share things together. So I'm not trying to disencourage your anything, but just to be aware of realities. Reality.
Yeah, no, I totally know. I know it's not just.
Yeah.
I think some people have these ideas that like going into this new field is gonna like open up all these opportunities and rainbows will shoot out of your eyeballs. But the truth is, every job is what it is. It's a job. And so no matter what field it is, whether it's teaching or programming,
exactly. Like programming, like any other kind of occupation. You might get lucky and join a good team. They have good spirit. They want to do the right things and they don't want to do it right. Or you can join the other end of the whatever we're talking about. So
yeah, I kind of want to be the ray of sunshine in this case. I got lucky with the company I signed up with. The other day, for example, I got really excited when I wrote my first like from scratch thing and got all the tests passing. And the person in the next desk over was like, if you get this excited in your test pass, you're in the right industry. So
that's good stuff, man.
Yeah. And so that like really sticks with me. You know, they're encouraging about the fact that, for example, I want to write the test before I write the code and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's very, it can be hit or miss, but you know, the nice thing about this industry also is you're not stuck in the same company forever.
Correct. But I think for a guy like me, like a newbie, it's kind of hard if you don't have much experience and you're built to kind of move between companies, because, like, for example, in my city, all the jobs out there for seniors, right? So for me, it's kind of hard. Okay, this company is not good. It's not good fit for me, but it's so hard to find other opportunities. So I'd rather stay there and get any kind of experience, at least on my resume, just to move on, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the case for me. So, yeah.
I think this definitely acknowledges the fact that like being excited about something is valuable, and unfortunately it's contagious. The negativity is probably easier to be more contagious than it is to keep your positivity. But as a new person, that's in a way an advantage. It's a premium you have, is that you haven't been you're still ignorant of the woes of life.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more fun when you're able to be enthusiastic about it rather than if you're just kind of, doing it to get the paycheck. And that's one of the things I like about the CodeNewbie community, is that everyone here is here because they want to learn and they're interested in it and they're excited. So, yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm a delicate flower, and I'm gonna stay that way.
On, man.
My delicate flower will never be tainted.
Okay, good for you.
That's the spirit. So here's another. This is kind of like, this seems kind of obvious to me, the concrete skills. The dream team that you want to work on is super talented and you're just not. So, their solution is pretty obvious, like acquire and maintain these concrete skills. And this is one question that I've never heard before that I would be terrified to answer if I was asked it in an interview. If we hire you today, what can you do on Monday morning that will benefit us? And that's crazy. But it's a good way to kind of think about, how are you going to benefit this company that you're working for? Because it's not just about you, it's about how you can help them. And they suggest taking CVs or resumes from people that you find super talented and kind of take notes on what their path is and what skills that they have, and to pursue those skills and continuously update your resume. So yeah, this is kind of where I want to get out of where I am now, but I don't have the resume to do that. It's just, that's just straight up hard work, I guess. Yeah, there's no secret sauce in that. But it is good that they point that out.
I kind of like this because there's a lot of tweets coming around about privilege, and it's true. I mean, we live in a very biased, stratified world, but this to me is a sense of like egalitarianism, and like, what can you do? Just kick ass. If you can kick ass, it doesn't matter if you're white, you're black, you're a girl, you're a boy. It doesn't matter. Just and so I'm excited. Like I kind of want to know what are some people that you guys look up to that fit this description? Who are your kind of heroes, I guess, in terms of coding and stuff, if you guys have any.
Oh, sure.
Mine is Sandy Metz. I like Sandy Metz. I think she's my hero.
She's super nice in person too.
I mean, that's why she is. She's not an asshole. I mean, like once you get really good, it's easy to be like, you know, oh, poo on you, small people. But she's like, let's learn this. I'm just like, I love you, you know?
Yeah, yeah. If you ever get a chance to meet her, take it, because she's super approachable and very friendly to like people who coming up to her and talking to her.
I want to be just like her, so.
I'm always like mega impressed by Saran, who does the CodeNewbie groups. I just like I don't know how she has time to do all of this stuff. Like I don't understand it, and I just like want to do maybe even a quarter of what she does, and I would consider myself to be a huge success. So it's like that's something, that work ethic is just out of this world.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I felt like totally overwhelmed by work and stuff, I think about, okay, well, I actually think about Tehran. I'm like, okay, so she's doing this, this, and this, which is like, yeah, who knows how many times more than what I'm doing right now, and yet somehow she manages to do it. I can pull myself together and get through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think some of the other people in the community, Aaron Patterson, who is on the Rails core team, and I think maybe on the Ruby core team as well. He is a super nice guy and does not take himself too seriously, even though he works his ass off. And of course, James Gray, and also Abdi Grimm.
All very nice people too.
Yeah, all super nice people. And yeah, they're people that when you meet them, they live up to your expectations.
What's interesting though, it's like I know these people not as coders. It's not like I've sat with them and did a coding session with them. But the concrete skills they possess are also, you know, they're not just a coding thing. They're just good people, like we said. And so they're just able to.
There's no reason why you couldn't get a chance to sit and code with any of those people. Like if you pursued that opportunity, you could do it. And I've sat and coded with a couple of them, and if you get the chance, you should take it. Saran has done things like stay up until the wee hours of the morning pair coding on Google Hangouts with people in CodeNewbies because she needed to work on something that evening, and getting on with some CodeNewbies and letting them walk through the code with her gave her somebody to talk to and us a chance to learn. And she does things like that. And if you take those opportunities, you know, when you get the chance to jump on it.
Totally. No, but yeah, the part I was highlighting too is the fact that like the concrete skill they possess isn't necessarily their coding prowess, you know, as much as it is their human prowess, you know. And I like this exercise because it's showing me that I don't have to just be able to make tests, but I also have to be approachable. You know, I have to be able to communicate ideas. I need to be able to write well. And so these concrete skills are very, like, you know, they're not just sticking my head in, you know, some specs book all day. You know, these concrete skills can also be storytelling, you know, inspiring, you know. So
I think that's a really good point.
Are also all super enthusiastic, but that was mine.
And
they're all. I love them.
I'll have another name here in a minute, but I don't want to stall the conversation.
So yeah, concrete skills, super important. So this next one is expose your ignorance, which is pretty scary, I think, for even, you know, for anybody, coder or not. The context here is people are literally giving you money to be good at your job, and the problem is that you don't know how to be good at your job. So that's not something that you want, you know, that disconnect is terrifying. And the solution here is just, if you don't have those abilities yet, just demonstrate that you can learn them, mostly by learning other things and showing that you have the capacity to learn and learn quickly. And, you know, so tell people the truth. Like, I don't know this thing, but I'm going to go learn it tonight, and I'll tell you about it tomorrow. And then do it. Ask questions, which can sometimes also be scary with like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe I should just not ask. It looks obvious, but just ask questions it's always something you should do. And know that you're going to be kind of uncomfortable with doing this at first because it's kind of not natural. They had that quote about the study that showed that we want to be competent. We want to be shown as competent, and it's against our nature to show that we're incompetent. So the action here is to write down a list of things you don't understand about your work and keep updating it as you either learn it or find that you don't understand new things.
Didn't I recommend making that available to everyone to see? Or did I imagine that part?
Which I thought was...
That's scary.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of an interesting... Yeah.
What are some things on your list?
Ooh.
I'm actually, honestly, all over. I don't think it's all of Ruby. Like, you know something.
Yeah, a little bit.
List of things that you don't understand. I hate bundler. I don't understand bundler. Like, I admit now, somehow I.
So at RubyConf, I went to a great talk on how bundler works, and it's on Freaks.tv. You need to watch it. It was a really great talk, and it's all about like the problem that existed before bundler and the problem that it solves, and how it solves that problem.
Can you send me that video?
Yeah. I'll look it up right now.
But yeah, I was going through some trouble, and I just basically Google farted, and I ended up installing all my gems locally somehow. I have no idea how that happened, and so I couldn't Rails S because like I didn't really. Basically, bottom line is I didn't know what was happening, and so it's frustrating because I'm trying to do B, but I don't understand X, Y, and Z, which depends on H, J, K, and I'm just like trying to juggle between all these things. But yeah, I guess exposing ignorance is good because now Clayton's going to give me something that might help me with all of these.
And I think when you're in a good environment like that, when you expose your ignorance instead of being shunned for it or having your fears come true and everyone knows that you don't know anything, then instead it's an opportunity for people, at least people who are not bad people, to share stuff. And you can start a conversation and talk about that, maybe find other people that don't know about it and want to learn.
Yeah, and the best way to learn something is to teach someone else, So it's kind of like if you have people asking questions that you think are obvious, take that as a opportunity to like delve way deep into it.
Yeah, definitely.
So the flip side of exposing your ignorance is confronting your ignorance. So now that you just realized you don't know the things you need to know to do your job. So now you've got a list of things, but you don't know where to begin because people already assume you know the stuff. So it's like you're hired as a Ruby dev, and then people are like, Ruby, and then you're like, I know one thing about Ruby. And so the solution here is to pick one skill, tool, or technique and actively fill in the gaps in your knowledge about it. So they kind of make a note of saying you have to strike a balance between this and exposing your ignorance. Like you can expose your ignorance and just be kind of complacent about it. And you're like, oh, I don't know, and then just not do anything to fix it. But that's not productive. So don't do that. Confront your ignorance and actually take your list and learn each thing that you don't know and cross them off as you go. And I really like this idea of making a list of the things you don't know, like make a Trello board for it or whatever, and just run through them. Maybe I'll do that right now.
I found the title of that talk. It's called How Does Bundler Work Anyway?
Okay, cool. Wow, I guess that's part 2. Thanks for helping me confront my ignorance.
Yeah, there you go. Apprenticeship Patterns in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of this like confronting your ignorance. They kind of talk about like picking one skill, tool, or technique. That's kind of, I don't really I feel like that's still such a big pool to choose from. Like, oh, I should work on. I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even know how to narrow it down. Maybe it's just because I have such big gaps in my knowledge. But like, I mean, you said like bundler, but I don't know.
I think each one of us has his own list, right? His or her own list, and maybe I mentioned it last time, but the way I learn things is based on my needs. Like at work, we started to work with Elasticsearch, for example. I don't know Elasticsearch. I don't really care for it, but now I have to kind of dig into it and know how does this thing work. Like I never used Redis with Rails, but now I have to know how Redis works with Rails. So all those kind of stuff were on my list, but I never had the urge or the need to kind of learn them. So, but now I have to. So I think it depends on your needs, because some stuff you will never really need to learn or to know about, because you will never work with. So why waste your time unless you have lots of time? So this is another story. So, but yeah,
Who is this person who has time?
You never know, though. I was always like completely uninterested in state machines, and then my job, the biggest tool that we work with is basically a complicated state machine.
Okay.
And so you'll never know what running into, even getting, like if you're just curious about it, you never know what problem might be solved just because you've exposed yourself to the concept and gotten a basic understanding of the idea.
I think that's an interesting point, because especially if you're going to make some sort of commitment to confront your ignorance, then the things that you expose should be things that you plan on learning, or at least most of them, I would think so. But then maybe there's something, like you said, with a state machine that's way outside of what you might have looked into, that you then find interesting and follow up on, or necessary. I think you said it's part of your job, right? So it ends up being necessary. So maybe those two kind of come back together, and that it's something that's not just that you don't know. I mean, there's thousands of technologies that I don't know, but it's something that you don't know that kind of intersects with things that you might need to know for whatever job or role that you're taking part of.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could add like, oh, I don't know, Objective-C, but I'm not gonna add that to my list.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe I will. Who knows?
I don't know how Ruby and C. Like, I don't understand how writing how one language compiling to another. Like, I don't understand how that works. And I think that would be a useful thing to have a good grasp on. If I'm going to be writing in a language like Ruby that compiles to C, I should understand at least a pretty good idea of how that works.
Like native extensions type thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, even the fact that that there are such a thing as native extensions, I think there are plenty of people who are new to Ruby who don't even know what that means. But the idea that, like, what is the process that happens when you run a code in Ruby, and how it gets interpreted and compiled and everything? Like, what is it, or even the steps that goes through?
Yeah, that's something I don't know, for sure.
I think so. I think I accidentally encountered this in trying to get RVM to work on my Windows machine, which, spoiler alert, does not work, so don't try it. But I know that it ran into some errors where it was like could not compile to C, and it was because I was missing a library called GCC.
Yeah.
So that might be a good place to start. I have no idea what it is because I was just like, this is the worst thing ever, and downloaded it, and it fixed it or whatever, but not enough where I could use it.
Right.
But that could be a place to start.
Were you able to get a Ruby system manager onto your computer?
Nope.
Nope. Did you try Ruby?
That's why. Did I try what?
Sure, Ruby.
Mm-mm.
This is what I use to manage my Ruby versions, and it's super stripped down. So maybe it would play nicer with Windows because it's not very. There's not a lot of libraries.
I'll definitely look into that. The problem that I was kind of having was that the code tests that I was using had an RVM file, so they were using Ruby Version Manager.
Yeah.
So, and plus they were also using Ruby 1.9.3. I was like, okay, but this really isn't going to work. And so now I'm just on Ubuntu because I spent 15 hours this weekend trying to figure that out and it didn't work. So I'm giving it up. That is not a good return on investment.
That's terrible and frustrating because you shouldn't have to switch operating systems to be able to use the Ruby language. But I've heard so many people that code in Ruby that have run into the exact problem you have, where they got into a situation where they needed some library that was not supported in Windows, and they just had to switch eventually. Either that, or you get fancy and do some kind of vagrant system, but then you're basically running Linux anyway. You're just running Linux on Windows and then running the Ruby in Linux.
I've seen that issue in the Python community as well, where like someone will come up with a question, and like either someone on a Mac or someone running Linux is like, "Oh, you just do this," and they're like, "No, it's not working," and then you find out they're on Windows.
Right.
And a lot of people come in expecting to be able to run on Windows, and it might work for some people, but other people it doesn't, and they just have a bad experience because of it.
Well, I know they're having this issue exactly right now with Rails 5. Rails 5 is in beta. They're wanting to introduce some new things that are part of Rails 5, like built into Rails 5, not just gems. And those things have libraries that that don't have Windows support. And so if that happens, then either those libraries are going to have to get Windows support, or Rails 5 is going to have to dump those things, or you're just not going to be able to use Rails 5 on Windows. One of those three things is going to happen.
Yeah, I think I wish I didn't have to give up my Windows computer because I do like my computer. It's a good one. If you're programming, obviously, but for day-to-day use, it just sucks because it was a graduation present, and my granddad got it for me. He literally said, "You don't need a Mac because you won't be a graphic designer or a programmer, so I'm going to get you a Windows." And the two things that I am right now are a graphic designer and a programmer. So that didn't work. But yeah, it is kind of annoying that you have to completely jump the thing, jump operating systems. But it's not like switching to Ubuntu is all that difficult.
No.
I mean, I did it today.
Yeah.
Good job.
Until you do what I do, where you show up to work one day and you try to turn your computer on, and the Windows system won't load. Like Ubuntu, the computer, Linux will fire up and you can get a shell, but you can't get GNOME or anything to load. Just randomly. So that'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also hesitant about switching until I can back up my computer all the way, which seems important. So anyway, back to not my issues. So confronting your ignorance, now you're at the deep end, which, so the context here is you've taken no risks, you've taken small, safe steps, and now you're kind of in a rut. And your problem is that, you need to grow your skills and your confidence and your portfolio, which is a long list of things. And your solution here is just jump in at the deep end, take the scary job in the faraway place, do the scariest thing you can, and you're forced to learn. You have to learn. You have to level up to keep up. So it might be scary and stressful, but you won't be in a rut anymore. And so their action here is to kind of ask yourself some questions and write down, what what's the biggest successful project you've ever worked on in terms of lines of code and number of developers, kind of quantifying, your projects, and then map out other projects on this kind of spectrum and see, how big and how complex and how scary they are. So maybe don't take on projects that aren't big and complex, or just so you have a better idea, I guess, of what you're getting yourself into. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that a lot of projects have the ability to become very complex, and that might just be because it was something basic, but you keep on coming up with concepts and ideas and you want to run with it. Other projects, like, just are by definition complex. I like when I have the time to go dig into something like that, but I don't usually have the time, and I get frustrated because of it. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling.
Mm-hmm.
It helps when you're being paid. It helps when you're being paid to do it.
Yes, it definitely helps when you're being paid to do it.
It's a lot harder to get the mental and emotional energy to jump in the deep end on something that's like a non-paid project.
But also on the flip side, for a paid project, you might feel rushed that you can't really explore something or go a direction you wanted to go because you need to show results.
It's true.
Can I ask you, Kareem? Because if I remember correctly, last week you talked about looking for an apprenticeship, but then just settling for getting a job. Like it kind of sounds like that. It's just like, oh, I'm looking for something to help me learn. Oh shit, they're employing me now. Do you feel like that's the situation, or?
It wasn't really like that. Like they did. Like, I'm not sure. I don't really exactly remember what I said, but basically, yes, I was looking for a company that will help me grow and learn stuff, and I didn't really care about getting paid or getting paid basically and work as full-time developer and do stuff on a production code base. But while I was doing this, I kind of got an offer, come work for us as a full-timer and get paid and contribute to the production code base. And they said, okay, because I didn't find any other opportunity that will give me what I wanted to have. And that's how I ended up working with this team that lacks. I hope they are not listening to this podcast, but but yeah. So yeah.
Was it a deep end experience though? Because I could have just gotten it wrong, but.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Sorry.
Was it like a deep end thing where do you feel like you were kind of going past?
Actually, no. But the thing is, when you are starting your first job kind of thing, it's kind of I didn't have enough confidence in my skills and myself. But actually, when you get exposed to the code base, any code base at the couple of weeks will be kind of strange until you kind of get used to it and dig into it and kind of you figure it out. And the thing is, reality in real life, you don't really touch on all the I would say what I wanted to say. You don't touch the whole code base at once. So today I'm working on this, and tomorrow I'm working on this, and till now there's some parts of the code base I don't know about them, and I don't really care because I'm fixing this or I'm adding a feature to this, and that's it. So basically, but the thing is, for the first few weeks you'll get overwhelmed. What? Like, I'm working on a Rails app. There's some new structures or architectures that for a newbie like me, I didn't like all the tutorials or the books or whatever. You have the MVC, like the models, views, and controllers. That's it. That's all I knew about before working. But now you have other stuff. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, or I kind of got. So I'm not sure.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
but yeah, if you have any other questions, we can maybe after the.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. It's no problem.
That was a really good point though about you're not when you're new to some project that's an existing established project, you're never starting from the ground up. You're always starting from an existing context, and so like the way to approach that is find some problem that you can wrap your head around that doesn't touch the all over the place. Find some little place that has an existing problem that you can touch, and figure out how to solve that. And you'll be amazed how, in the process of solving that problem, you get better context for stuff that's around that problem, and the areas that you can touch expand over time. And that's the process for approaching an existing code base, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think too, this doesn't necessarily mean, like they had that example of the guy who took the job in Nigeria, where he'd never been before. But I think this also, like jumping at the deep end, like I feel like I kind of did that in terms of like meetup groups. Like I, went to a couple, then all of a sudden I was like running 5, and now I'm like, okay, maybe I should take that back a little bit. Not really 5, like 3, but it's still a lot. And but yeah, it's just you just kind of jump in. But now I'm pretty confident, at least not necessarily in my skills, but like in the fact that I could solve things because I have a good community. Like I know where to go to find stuff, and it's not always like jumping at the deep end of drowning yourself in code. It's kind of other things too, like jump into doing like meetups and like going out of your comfort zone in that way. Your people skills even, gotta take risks all around.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely at a transition right now where, coding has just always been this learning hobby of mine. And now I need to, I'm going to actually apply to jobs. And and so I don't really have much confidence in my own skill set. But, I do have a mentor, and he says, it's just about learning. So that makes me feel better. But, yeah, I'm definitely at that deep end sense where it's like, well, I'm going to have to actually get paid to do this. And so I know, Clayton, you just got a job, and that's the context of what I'm asking about. I'd imagine for you it felt like a deep end when you first started applying to jobs.
The first time you open, it takes you days. It'll take you a couple of days to even get their app running on your computer.
Okay.
To even get it where you can run the test suite without it crashing will take you a couple of days, at least.
Okay.
You'll be lucky. Depending on the place, it might take you a week. So, like, that's part of the process of getting a new job is getting the basic tools you need to run their test suite will take you a while, and that's just part of the transition process.
Cool.
If you're not lucky, it might take you a week to get a computer.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
That's not as deep as I thought it was. Because in my mind, getting a job is just, okay, now make Facebook. I'm just like, okay.
Right. Well, and no company in their right mind that is hiring first-timers expects you to be contributing. They don't expect you to be making money for them your first week there, or possibly even your first month there. You'll be lucky if you're really helping them out seriously by the end of a month.
I think you just made my day. So
yeah, realistic. I've been there since I've been at this company now right at a month, and I'm really just now starting to pull my weight where I'm actually like taking bug reports. Like they had 3 bug reports today, and other people had stuff they needed to work on. And I looked at the 3 bug reports, and I was like, well, 2 of these I can solve one of them, I opened up the code base, said nope, shut it back, and said I'm not touching that 1,000-line file. That's not happening. So, yeah, that's just part of being new to the company. And I figured out the other 2 bugs, and one of them I know how to fix, and I'll go and fix it in the morning, and the other one, I'll get it too. But and I have other things to work on. Like I told my wife tonight, I've been there for a month. This is the first time after a month where I actually have more stuff to do than I have time to do it in.
Yeah.
And it takes about a month to get to that point.
Mhm.
Because for a while you're just trying to you're trying to find useful things to do for a while. Because at first you're afraid to touch anything because you're just going to break stuff because you don't understand the context of how it's even working. Yep. Especially if it's in a DSL that you're not used to, or if you're doing something like porting over a language that you don't actually know into a language that you kind of do know, but it's your first language, like that kind of stuff. When you're doing that, you're going to break things if you're not like super slow and super methodical. So, yeah, don't beat yourself up if like it's said in there, like, what can you do for me on Monday? That's not realistic for your first job. That's realistic for your second or third job, I hope. But even then, like, I'm not going to be contributing anything until I get the app up and running, and that sometimes takes a few days.
Yep.
I think we lost him.
Yep. Correct.
Hey.
Okay, so the very last slide, the last one for chapter 2 is retreat into competence. So in this case, knowing that, like, you took a big risk and it's not going great, and now you realize, like, oh my gosh, I know nothing. The solution here is go back to where you started and kind of remind yourself how far you've come. So do like a little confidence boosting project, but limit it. Don't like suck yourself in and only do that stuff that you know for a long time. Just go back and do like a little thing. It takes 20 minutes. Got your confidence back, and then you can go tackle that big scary project. I actually used to do this with just when I was like just learning. I used to do this a lot with FizzBuzz. I would just do it just like every day just to see if I remembered it. Because I'd get so freaked out that I do nothing. And it does really help, so I highly recommend it.
I think this is why I like tutoring. This is so I can assert my dominance over another human being. No, it's just like it kind of reminds me that it is difficult, and everybody struggles with it, and so like it just reminds me that I do know something. So, and it's helping someone else. So there's all those things. That's my way, I guess, of retreating into competence.
Teaching is the best way to do it.
I have used exorcism.io for my way of doing this. Like if I get, like, I use it, so exorcism.io is this really great code quiz resource. But one of the things it has is if you actually go on the website, it suggests that you do 5 code reviews a day, and it gives you like the project, and they only have you do code reviews for quizzes that you've solved. So like that way you at least know what you're looking at. And my like 15 minutes is in every morning when I first get to work is I do my 5 code reviews, and I've done them so many times now that I know all of these quizzes really well, unless it's a quiz that I've just solved in the last couple of days. And so like I've gotten to where I see the same approaches to solutions, and every couple of days like somebody will have like a novel way of doing something that's really interesting. But like it's my way of retreating back into something that I know really well. I do it for 5-10 minutes a day, and then I set it aside and go work on something that I feel completely incompetent at. But it's almost like a meditation for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like. I just started doing exorcism as well, like last week, and
I know. I
when all of
saw
this,
one of your quizzes.
yeah, yeah, that was kind of cool. So, yeah, when I was like going through all this stuff this weekend, where I just couldn't get the stuff to work on my computer, and it was so frustrating, and I was like, this is never gonna work. I'm never gonna code ever again. And then, and that was more of like, oh, my machine isn't gonna let me code ever again, as opposed to like, I don't want to. But so like I went on exorcism and like did the first thing, and I was like, oh wait, like I actually solved that in a reasonable amount of time. Cool. And continued to do my head banging against the wall Windows stuff for the next several hours. But it is really nice to be able to kind of do small stuff like that. Highly recommend it.
That's cool. I recently started exorcism as well.
I highly
Nice.
recommend participating in the code reviews. I've learned more participating in code reviews than I ever did solving the quizzes.
Wow.
Like, how come?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yeah, I see the kinds of problems that people run into, and
Okay.
so I very quickly get good at spotting solutions for those problems, and because I'm recommending solutions for those problems over and over, it helps me internalize those solutions.
Yeah.
It also the quizzes are specifically designed to touch on different. A lot of them have very different ways that you can solve them, and so I'll see people solve them in ways I've never seen before, or use something I've never seen before, or I'll get and it'll inspire me to get a bug, and I'll go try to solve. Like for example, one of the quizzes requires you to monkey patch some of Ruby's classes. And so I tried to solve it using refinements, because I know that like if it's going to make me monkey patch, I'm going to try to do it as safely as possible. And so I solved the quiz using refinements.
Nice.
And so yeah, it's just I've gotten a lot out of exorcism. I think it's a really good project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And it also
have you
gives you a
got
confidence
any-
boost when you get an advantage.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Mary was talking.
Oh no, I was just kind of commenting that it does give you a nice little confidence boost when you get it right.
Yeah.
Test pass.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because I tried it a couple of times, but I haven't got any kind of good feedback. So I kind of like this sucks. Like I use Yes to give feedback. Use the Ruby style guide to style this because your indentation is a bit off, or why you're using this, use that, right? But to be honest, I'm expecting in return that some people will give me some pointers on my code to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't get something in return, you kind of feel like, why I'm doing this, But yeah, I don't know.
Well, so
have you got any like positive feedback or any good
Sure.
feedback?
Yeah, I've had some of that, but I think that for me, at least, the biggest benefit of it has not been getting feedback; it's been giving it.
Okay.
I get more out of looking at how other people have solved the problem that I already have a good understanding of, because seeing people solve the problem in novel ways creates. Like I have used some of the things I've seen other people do in exorcism in my own code later. Like not just on exorcism, but just in like actual Ruby coding, because I now have access. Like I now have internalized in this context. This is a useful way, particularly useful way to solve that problem.
Yeah. All right.
That makes sense.
Hey, Jamal, I see you're not doing any Ruby quizzes on it.
I haven't done any Ruby on there yet. Well, I just started like a couple weeks back.
Okay. Yeah, I can't review any of your quizzes because I haven't. I'm not allowed to review any of your quizzes because I haven't done anything with
I'll
Mozilla
share
Python.
mine. I didn't do much, but if you guys feel generous enough to kind of review the ones I did, I highly appreciate it. So.
And I'll put it on my list to do some Ruby quizzes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you should.
Ruby has 66 quizzes, and I've only actually finished 16 of them. As much as I talk about how much I like the site, I'll do iterations. I'll do 3 or 4 iterations on a quiz a lot of times before I move on to the next one. Or I'll even move on to 2 or 3, and then I'll have an idea and go back and iterate over a quiz I've done previously. So I have a bunch of versions of quizzes, but I've only solved 16 of the 60. So I'm about a quarter of the way through all the Ruby quizzes.
Well, 16, it's pretty good, man. I only did 5, so that's pretty good.
Do you find that you walk away with a greater understanding of the solution or the problem by doing it multiple times?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to try that. That's interesting.
The site makes it very easy for you to submit multiple iterations of your quizzes and to iterate on past solutions, and I strongly recommend doing that. Taking feedback or giving feedback, and then from the feedback you've given, taking some of the ideas that you've seen other people implement and going and implementing it in your own code style.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. So, and then the last slide is just the conclusion slide. So,
I'm sorry.
conclusion: ignorance is not bad. It's not a bad thing if you recognize it and confront it. Learn and attack it with enthusiasm. And I thought this graphic was pretty interesting because there's not really a start point or any like one start point, which is nice.
Yeah, you see it as nice. I see it as confusing. Yeah, it's like, what? Where should I start? Yeah.
True. Yeah, that can be kind of scary.
Karim, your hello world is quite cheeky.
Is it?
Yeah, you have a default argument.
Let me see. I don't even remember. 1 second. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, I didn't get any feedback, so I think it's good enough. Let's move on. So that's the thing. So.
Well, your second one, or the very first one after Hello World, I'm looking at. You got feedback on it.
The Hamming, right? Yeah.
Oh, your gigasec is way too long.
Uh-oh.
You can solve that one with 1 line of code.
Yeah. I suck, man. What can I say?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, here, let's start seeing each other's faces again.
Yeah, can you not make me be presented to everybody? Great, thanks. Cool. So, how did you guys feel about that chapter in general? Good, bad, excited, terrified? All the above?
I think it's good. I thought that it's really, I think, condensed because there's lots of action needs to be done in one chapter. Like the chapter has lots of, I don't know, patterns, and each pattern has an action. Maybe you already did them. It's, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them. So I thought it's a bit overwhelming. And that's why I asked you guys on the Slack, what should we do about the actions? Are we really doing those? Yeah, it's good, but it's a bit overwhelming if you are going to do each and every action, you know?
Well, maybe there's something before we leave then, just to keep it simple, maybe there's one thing that we're going to try this week, one of the actions. For me, it's putting a list of my ignorance. I don't know why, but I'm anxious to put what I don't know on my home website. So next week, I'm going to let you guys see what I don't know. It's going to be a long list, I think.
I think that should be everybody's homework for next week.
I agree. Yeah.
Are we doing 5 or
1? What's the one
5?
thing?
One thing?
I vote 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a cool idea. Yeah, and then I haven't looked at Chapter 3 yet at all. Does anybody want to like volunteer to do the slides for that? I guess don't flake again, please. If
I'll
you're gonna do it.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Great. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. If you can share your slides on Slack, I'll just pin them just as a reference, you know. That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can actually do that right now because it's on Google Docs. Yeah, and also, hot tip, do your presentation on Google Docs. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, that's the plan. Actually, I'm gonna take
the hard way.
Yeah, one of your slides and make it as a reference for me. So to follow the template, I don't want to really do something from scratch. I'm kind of lazy, so.
Yeah, understandable. This one only took me about 15 minutes, actually. Normally they have more graphics and pictures and whatnot, but sometimes.
All right, it's pinned to the channel.
Awesome.
All right.
I don't mean to bogart the action thing. Is there an action that someone like that you guys want to do that's different? Like, is there one that stuck out to you that you want to try this week?
Actually, what we can do is, as you mentioned, we can create the list and actually go for one of the items. What do you think, guys?
No, that's what we should do. We should all create our 5 items list and then come with the one that we researched.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
That's great. Like, do the whole list, and then we can all talk about the one that we actually spent the time trying to figure out.
Okay, let me get this straight. So create the list with 5 items, but research 1 item, correct? Okay. Yeah, good.
Or or research all of them, but like do the one that you learn the most, or like your favorite or whatever, and we can talk about one.
Oh, research the 5. Oh, because that's kind of too much, man.
Well, research as many as you want.
Yeah, okay.
Or just
start with 1 and let's see how it goes. Because,
There we go.
Because I'm doing the slides, so that's 2 for me. So.
Right. You've got a lot of homework.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I'll also take away doing some Ruby exorcism.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to start coding a little Ruby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
All right.
This has been awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Next week's going to be cool.
Good session. And I think, Jamal, if you just get us offline, I think.
Yeah. I will go ahead and do that now.
Yeah.